Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Arcserve UDP webinar. My name is Charlie Smith. I work in the pre-sales team in the UK and Ireland. Today is a special webinar because we're launching Unified Data Protection 6.5 on Tuesday next week on the 31st of January. So today I'm going to be talking quite a bit about some of the new features that are going to be coming out in the new release. But before we do that, I want to talk about the sort of build-up or the background to UDP and where it came from. I'm going to talk about a typical kind of solution architecture and how we deploy UDP technology, and talk about some of the benefits of the product and the solution as well. And we're going to go through a UDP 6.5 demo as well, showing you the new interfaces and some of the new key functionality that I'll talk about in the presentation as well. So I hope you enjoy the session. It should last for just over an hour, and we'll get underway now. So thank you. By the way, before we start, just to mention that we do have a question panel in the GoToWebinar, so if you do want to raise a question, please use the question panel, and I'll review any questions at the end and answer those on the GoToWebinar question panel. So thank you. Okay, so a bit about Arcserve. As a company, we've been around for a very long time. Arcserve really started its life in the late 80s, early 1990, where we launched Arcserve Backup, which was a traditional backup and recovery solution, very much optimized in those days for file and print environments around the Novell NetWare platform. So throughout the 90s, Arcserve became a market leader in selling data protection for Novell and NetWare environments. In 1996, Arcserve as a company, which was called Cheyenne, was acquired by a company called Computer Associates, and over the sort of late 90s and into the sort of first part of the millennium, Arcserve was further developed more into Windows and open systems, so it was there to provide protection for Windows, Linux and Unix environments. About 5 years ago, we decided as a company that the backup market was rapidly changing, and even though we still maintain Arcserve Backup and keep it very much up to date in development with all the latest platform certifications, we also realized that the market was rapidly changing. Virtualization was kind of being rolled out across the board in most organizations. Storage continues to grow at an astronomical pace, and we believe that a rethink was required on how customers can proactively protect their environments and get around some of the headaches that you get with legacy backup technology, such as having to do weekly full backups, which is fine in an environment where you've got a small or medium amount of data, but when you've got very large organizations with sometimes hundreds of terabytes of data, it doesn't really scale to have to run weekly or monthly full backups because it just takes too long. The other challenge, of course, is what we call the recovery point objective, is how can you back up more frequently. Normal legacy backup technology is designed to do daily backups, which again, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was absolutely fine for most businesses, having a daily recovery point to roll back to if something went wrong. But what we found now is that IT has become so critical and fundamental to the business. Organizations are wanting to introduce more regular high-frequency backups to minimize data loss across their critical IT systems. So we decided to design a brand new product, which was block-based image backup technology to provide disk-to-disk backups. And that evolved into Unified Data Protection. So in May 2014 we launched UDP, and UDP was really taking all the best technology we had. So we introduced source-side global data deduplication, integrated replication, and very clever incremental forever disk-based backup technology to protect both physical and virtual environments. And as you can see on this slide here, that we're really building out a platform that provides very strong protection for Windows environments, including all the key applications and databases that you typically see in a Microsoft environment, We've also got plugins to protect Oracle and other critical systems as well. And one of the luxuries we have got with UDP is it's very optimized for virtual infrastructure to provide agentless backup of VMware and Hyper-V environments, but we also have agent technology that provides very strong protection for physical environments, and also hypervisors that we don't support out of the box, such as Citrix Zen, KVM, and others now that are getting, Acropolis on Nutanix, for example, that's getting very popular. So we can protect VMs in these environments by using our agent technology. We're also very much optimized in looking at protecting workloads in the cloud across Amazon, Microsoft, etc. And we've also been expanding the back end. UDP is predominantly a disk-based backup and recovery solution, but we've provided more scalability that we can, for example, leverage hardware snapshot technology built into your SAN. So if you're running NetApp, Nimble, or HP FreePAR integrated SANs, we can integrate with the disk array management and offload VMware and physical and Hyper-V backups onto the SAN to provide higher performance and scalability in backing up virtual environments and physical environments and taking the load from the host level environments. We've obviously got a pedigree in tape support. We've been managing tape libraries for over 25 years. So you can see there, if you need to offload from your disk-based backups off to tape, we can support autoloaders, large tape library units across all the major manufacturers and units that you typically see in the industry. We can also migrate data to the cloud, and we've got different use cases behind that. We can do file copy to the cloud, we can archive to the cloud, we can also upload full recovery points to virtual recovery point servers running in the cloud, and I'll explain a bit more about that as we go through the slide. So really, Arcserve UDP is a very modern architecture. It's all been developed in the last 5 or 6 years. It's not old legacy technology where we bolt on new features to it. And you'll see when we do the demo why it's very innovative in how it works. Now, if we take a typical customer environment, a typical IT environment that I see is predominantly virtualized these days. Also, it's fair to say a lot of the customers in the mid-enterprise market are still running lots of physical servers as well. So, I know there's virtual backup solutions on the market that like to think that everything is virtualized, but in reality it's not that case at all. And what often happens is customers end up back, using 2 backup products. They will buy a virtual only backup solution for their virtual environment, and then they will continue to use a legacy backup product to protect their physical servers. But that just leads to difficulties around management and training, etc., and also 2 vendors to deal with if you have a problem, lack of integration between the 2 technologies as well. So with UGS, we deploy a server into the environment called a recovery point server, an RPS. The RPS can be delivered in 2 ways. It can be a software deployed solution where you can buy a physical server and storage and license our software to run on it, and we will turn it into a global dedupe appliance. Alternatively, you can actually purchase an Arcserve appliance which has all the compute, the storage and the software all bundled together. But functionally, an RPS and an appliance do exactly the same thing. They are a backup to disk target that provides global data deduplication. Now, on the subject of data deduplication, Arcserve has very, very clever source-side global dedupe. So if I'm backing up, for example, 100 VMs across a vCenter or a Hyper-V cluster, most backup solutions working in those environments would utilize the APIs, if it was any good, to snapshot just to change blocks across that virtual infrastructure. So for example, if I snapshot 100 VMs, I could end up with 300 or 400 gigabytes of changed blocks that needs to be backed up for that recovery point. Now, most backup solutions would transmit 300 or 400 gigabytes across the network, and if the solution is fortunate enough to support dedupe, it will commit unique blocks to disk, and then it will discard the vast majority of the backups. That's if it does inline dedupe. If it's post dedupe, it will land all the backup to disk, and then it will kind of process it after the backup completes and crunch the data down. Now, the challenge is that with with these technologies, the backup can be quite slow because it's having to send the full size, even of the full and the incremental backups across the network. What we do is we do an agentless snapshot of all the VMs. We use an agent for physical servers, but before we transmit any data, we communicate with the RPS or the appliance and say, okay, I've got 300 or 400 gigabytes of blocks. I'm going to send you this data. What blocks do you actually need? And the RPS calculates to make up that logical recovery point, it only needs 3 or 4% of that data. So rather than send 300 or 400 gigabytes, we may send 20 or 30 gigabytes across the network and reduce the backup time significantly because we're only sending the unique data from source. At the back end, we do global dedupe. So if I'm backing up 100 servers and 50 of them are running Windows 2012 R2, another 30 are running 2008 R2, and you've got 20 Linux servers, we will only back up the OS once for each type of OS and then reference the blocks to all the other servers. And essentially all we're doing is pulling unique blocks from each node that's different to any other node because we're globally comparing the blocks in the data store. So we also compress the data. So by using a combination of compression and global inline dedupe, we significantly reduce the size of the backups. As I've mentioned, we use agents for physical servers, and it's not like a traditional product where you have to deploy SQL agents and Exchange agents and Oracle agents and Windows client agents and open file agents. We just install a single agent service onto the server and it will detect if it's running Active Directory, SQL, Exchange, SharePoint, Oracle, etc., and use the plugins available to back up those data. We typically use VSS writers when we're taking snapshots in a Windows environment, and we use a block level incremental snapshot driver on Linux to do a similar thing. So we're backing up very efficiently. We only capture the changes. We only have to take a full backup the first time we back up the node, and then we just capture the changes. And whilst all this is going on, we're globally deduping all the blocks to really reduce the size of the backup. Now, as this diagram shows, we can offload to tape, which is still very popular. A lot of customers want to remove or reduce the burden of tape management. So there's kind of two camps there. You've got the customers that say, okay, you know, I still want to use tape, but I want to use it more intelligently. I don't want to have to load tape drives every day. All I want to do is, you know, maybe a monthly archive off to tape for compliance reasons and keep all my daily and weekly recovery points and monthly recovery points on disk. And the way we achieve that is by replicating the data between sites, so you've got multiple copies of the backups on disk. So it could be from a branch office to a head office. It could be from a head office to a DR site, and if you've got two copies of the data on disk, it removes the need to do daily or weekly tape copies. You know, the only time that you need to consider tape is for long-term archive. You know, we deal with organizations that need to keep data for 10 years plus, and it doesn't make sense to keep 10 years worth of backups on disk. Because it's, you know, even though disk is relatively low cost now, the management of disk is still quite expensive, and you don't really want to have 10 years worth of spinning recovery points, spindles holding all that data. So an intelligent approach might be to keep, you know, 6 months or a year's worth of recovery points on disk, and then do quarterly offload to tape for long-term retention. That's just one option. The other camp, of course, is the customers that like to go to the cloud and almost use cloud as a replacement for tape, so they can basically do, you know, on-premise protection, replicate those stores between sites for resilience and disaster recovery, and then for long-term archive, they can migrate data off to the cloud. You know, we integrate with Amazon, we integrate with Azure, and we also have the Arcserve Cloud, which is our own disaster recovery cloud, where we can also do DR provision. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. So by using an intelligent combination of disk, cloud or tape, we can provide short, medium and long-term retention of your backups. Now Arcserve is packed with enterprise class features, so we can recover files and folders on physical and virtual machines. We can recover emails in the cloud through Office 365 or on-premise. We can restore databases from SQL and Oracle. We can recover SharePoint environments at a granular level. So we have all that functionality that you would expect in any good backup product. But we also have a full layer of automation around disaster recovery called Instant Virtual Machine Recovery and Virtual Standby. Now these technologies allow you to spin up a virtual copy of your production server, which could be physical or virtual, into a virtual environment within a few minutes. Virtual Standby is one option which basically creates a virtual clone ahead of time in a DR virtual data store, and every time you run an incremental snapshot, it updates the clone by integrating with a snapshot manager to keep the clone in sync with the latest recovery points on disk. You can also hold historical recovery points, maybe the last 10 recovery points against the clone as well, in case you need to roll back. We had a customer a few weeks ago who had a ransomware virus encrypted a couple of his production servers, and he was able to roll back to the system image from the day before, spin it up as a VM, and then just vMotion that back into production. And it avoided him going through the nasty process of trying to deal with crooks who were trying to blackmail him and extortion him for money in return for encryption keys to free up his data. So it didn't get to that, fortunately. So virtual provisioning is very popular. The instant VM recovery is a feature that we added in version 6 of the product, which allows you to spin up a virtual clone directly from the backup storage. So it works very similar to Virtual Standby. The only difference is rather than create the VM ahead of time, which gives you good performance because that VM is running in a performance data store, you know, where you've got the IHOPS for databases and applications. With Instant VM Restore, you can boot directly from the backup storage, provision that VM, and then once it's up and running, you can migrate it into a permanent data store to keep it semi-permanent in that environment. There are pros and cons for each approach. The benefit of Instant VM Restore is it doesn't require any additional DR backup storage to provision. The downside is if you're trying to power on 40 machines all from the backup server, you're not going to get the same disk performance of having 40 clones running in a virtual data store where they've already essentially been provisioned and we're keeping them in sync with the backups. Now the Virtual Standby technology and Instant VM Recovery can do P2V, it can do V2V, and it can also work across hypervisors. So we could back up VMware VMs and then power them up into Hyper-V or vice versa. So it's very flexible and very popular. Now all this functionality can be managed from a central web-based console. It's very intuitive and easy to manage, and I'll show you this when we do the demo in a little while. This is just a screenshot from a customer who's using UDP in production. This customer actually published an article in Spiceworks, which is a technical forum, about their Arcserve implementation experience. And they put some interesting comments, screenshots, and one of the areas that they were really impressed with is the data deduplication. So they had something in the region of 40 to 50 terabytes of data, but obviously when you add up the base data for all machines plus all the incrementals on top, they had up to 254 terabytes of recovery points on disk because they had over, I think it's 3 months worth of backups on disk. Now after compression and dedupe, that was actually reduced down to under 15 terabytes of backup storage. So they were getting a 94% data reduction by using compression, dedupe, and globally deduping the blocks. They were able to significantly reduce the data. At the bottom there, one of our other customers, which is a part of the Open University called MK Smart, which are based in Milton Keynes, they have a virtual VMware environment. They're backing up over 512 terabytes of recovery points on disk, and after compression and dedupe, it's actually been held on under 14 terabytes of backup storage on their recovery point server. So they're getting a phenomenal data reduction rate across all their recovery points. Now, not every customer gets these rates. You know, it works. You get the best dedupe ratios in virtual environments. The sort of lowest I've seen is anything from 65-70%. The best I've seen is like 98-99%. So it can vary, but typically what I see on average, I would say about 70 to 80% data reduction is the norm in most customer environments. This is just a screenshot of the dashboard showing you, over time as you back up the same nodes repeatedly, the dedupes just get better and better as we find less and less unique blocks with every recovery point taken. So we also have other technology which makes the solution very popular. For physical servers, we have bare metal recovery technology, where we can recover physical servers to alternative hardware. It could be an IBM server and you need to recover it to a Dell server. It could be a HP server that you're recovering to IBM. It doesn't matter. We take care of all the drivers, recovering onto different hardware, etc., dissimilar hardware. We also have bare metal recovery for Linux as well as Windows, and it's really easy to use and very, very popular. We've also got real-time replication and high availability technology as well. So instant VM and virtual standby, which I was talking about before, is a form of high availability. It allows you to recover fairly quickly after a failure because we can spin up a virtual clone from the backup. With high availability, however, the difference is a recovery point objective. The RPO in UDP is as frequently as your backup policy, so it could be every 30 minutes, it could be every hour, it could be twice a day, it could be once a day. With real-time replication and high availability, you get a near zero RPO. We're using continuous data protection, CDP technology, and asynchronous block level replication to replicate physical or virtual machines either to a physical or a virtual DR environment. And you can combine physical to virtual, virtual to virtual, or physical to physical. It's very flexible. You can also replicate from one hypervisor to another. It's got some really nice features in there. Now, as part of that technology, we also have a DR testing function called Assured Recovery, which allows you to spin up your standby systems with the real-time replication into a test subnet on a scheduled basis. It will power on the DR systems into like I say, a test subnet, so it doesn't impact the production network, and you can check the integrity of the data running on these DR systems to make sure it's recoverable, it starts up, there's no errors, and everything's working as you would expect. And if there was a problem, you're kind of identifying an issue before you actually need to invoke it for real, not finding out in a real world situation that you've got a problem, because that would be pretty catastrophic, to be under pressure, try to fail over, and then suddenly discover that you've got some major problems with either the networking or the data integrity or whatever. So you can test all of this on a regular basis and get reports on the validity of that DR environment. Now I'm just going to talk a bit about UDP 6.5. As I've mentioned, we are launching this on Tuesday next week, the 31st of January. UDP 6.5 is really building on the back of a very strong foundation. UDP 6 was a very strong release for us, which we launched in February 2016. So less than a year down the line, we've got 6.5. So some of the areas that we're introducing in the product now is we're expanding the hardware snapshot support. So we've certified HPE FreePAR and completed certification for Nimble storage. With UDP 6, we'd already certified Nimble for Hyper-V and physical environments. So we've now got full certification with VMware for Nimble storage. We're also launching Office 365 Exchange Protection. So it's becoming increasingly popular now for customers to migrate their Exchange into the cloud, and it's been really going on for the last 2 or 3 years. So we're very proud that we can now offer customers the ability to provide granular recovery of emails that are held in the Microsoft cloud with Office 365. This technology provides more flexibility for organizations that, yes, Microsoft will provide a level of protection of the service in the cloud, but they don't offer a granular restore of emails. So if you're an IT organization or a company and you're CIO suddenly announces that there's a compliance case and you need to get back X number of emails from the cloud, from something that happened 6 months ago, we can easily do that now with the Office 365 Exchange integration. So we'll talk a bit more about that. We've also introduced backup of UNC paths, CIFS protection. So with UDP 6 and UDP 5 before that, if a customer had data held on a NAS, a network attached storage device, we couldn't really protect it with UDP because it was a share, and UDP was only designed to protect physical and virtual workloads. So now we can back up NAS shares to disk and provide incremental forever backups to pick up the changed files on a regular basis to minimize the sort of transfer time of backups. So it's really easy to set up, very simple, but provides very strong protection for NAS storage devices on the network. We've also introduced new certifications, Windows Server 2016, so we can actually run UDP, all the components on a Windows Server 2016 environment, and also protect Windows Server 2016 environments too. We've also certified vSphere 6.5 from VMware, which is something that is very important to our customers, so that's all been taken care of. We've also added more support for Linux, the latest Red Hat release for Red Hat and CentOS 7.x. We've certified the latest service pack for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 12, and we've also introduced support for Oracle Unbreakable Enterprise Kernel, UEK, has been certified with the UDP Linux technology as well. Moving on, we've also provided more integration into the Amazon cloud. So customers now can copy recovery points to Amazon AWS S3 storage, which allows you, it's just more flexibility. If you've got AWS S3 storage in the cloud, you can export recovery points on a scheduled basis into the cloud, which will rehydrate the data into a kind of full recovery point as it sends it up to the cloud to make it easily recoverable, and you can pull it up and pull it down easy all through the console. It's really nicely done. We've also got more interactive integration in the Amazon EC2 AWS cloud, where we can actually protect EC2 instances, so workload production servers running in the cloud. We've certified the backup of EC2 instances to local recovery point servers or NFS and CIFS shares if you want to back up to a non-dedupe target. Also back up EC2 instances to a local RPS on site. So if you want to actually back up the cloud instances to your on-site recovery point server, we fully support that as well. And we provide file and system level recovery in the Amazon cloud as well. We've also introduced DR as a service for the Amazon cloud, where you can actually spin up virtual clones onto Amazon workloads running in the cloud. So that's kind of got two use cases. One use case is you're backing up servers on site, you're replicating them to the Amazon cloud, and then using the Amazon cloud as a DR as a service where you can spin up production servers as Amazon workloads for disaster recovery. It could be also that you're backing up Amazon workloads and you can provision them all in the cloud to provide a cloud-based backup solution. So it's lots of use cases there. We've also been expanding a lot of automation and testing into the product as well. So this is really the other big area of development, is around the ability to do non-disruptive DR testing of Windows and Linux backups. So we can spin up Windows and Linux backups as virtual machines into a test subnet. We can also power on Windows and Linux volumes and provision just the storage into testing as well. And this provides the ability to give you the peace of mind that if you needed to spin up these machines for real, that you can test them on a regular basis. You've also, combining all of this, is what we call detailed SLA reporting. So you can create SLA profiles and assign groups to those profiles and actually put in what's an acceptable recovery point and recovery time objective for doing a bare metal restore, or doing a virtual standby, or doing a file system recovery, or doing an instant VM restore, or a DR test. So there's lots of different categories that you can measure the service on. And then in the dashboard, you can report on an ongoing basis how are you meeting these SLAs, and it constantly measures every node in these groups is constantly being audited. So if you have to do a file level restore on a VM or a physical server and it's part of an SLA group, it will measure the actual time against what you deem as an acceptable recovery point or recovery time objective, and actually report against that on an ongoing basis. We've also introduced a lot of other smaller updates into the product to make improve the capability of the product, and we'll talk a bit more about those. Now, in terms of licensing, there's two ways we can license the software. Well, there's actually three ways. I was going to say per socket and per terabyte are the two main mechanisms, but we also have per server licensing with our UDP Advanced Edition. Per terabyte licensing is simply how much front-end source data are you backing up. Another way to ask that question is if you were to do one full backup of all your production servers, physical and virtual, how big to the nearest terabyte would that backup be before we compress and dedupe the data? So it's the front-end size of the data. The per socket license seems to be our most popular license model. This is a number of physical CPU sockets across the physical servers in your environment. So if it's a virtual environment, we add up the CPU sockets across your virtual hosts. If you've got non-virtual servers, we add up the socket count across those machines as well, and we license it on the number of sockets, and it's only the populated sockets that we measure the license on. It says there also per server, so this is quite useful. With the UDP Advanced Edition, we can do an OS license, so this is good if you're backing up servers in the cloud where you don't know how many sockets are actually supporting the hardware at the back end. We can just do an OS license, make it very easy to license. And sometimes it's also more cost effective to use a per server license if you've got a physical server with lots of CPUs in it, for example, as well. Now, the different editions, we have UDP Advanced Edition, which is all the standard UDP functionality. It provides all the plugins to back up physical and virtual machines, Windows and Linux, to back up databases and applications, Active Directory. It also has all the virtual standby and instant VM recovery functionality as well. Now, the premium licenses are probably our most popular license, and that includes everything that's in the Advanced Edition, but it also has SAN hardware snapshot for NetApp, Nimble, and HP FreePAR. It also has role-based access into the console, and also if you need to do disk to tape migration, it has full tape library support in the premium license as well. And then we have the Premium Plus, which is basically everything that's in Premium, plus it has our real-time replication and high availability software, Arcserve RHA, included in that license. You can actually mix per socket and per server licenses, so you could have 10 sockets at Premium Plus, 70 sockets at Premium, and 20 sockets at Advanced if you wanted, or you can mix per server and per socket as well. The only thing you cannot mix is per terabyte with anything else. So if you've got a per terabyte license, the way the license enforcement works is completely different to per socket and per server. So you have to have a separate console to manage that. So that's kind of how we license the software. Now, we also have appliances, and I mentioned this at the start of the presentation. The appliances have become really popular this year. We just launched a new range. We had a range called the 7000 series, which is coming towards the end of life. Not in terms of the software, it's more we're changing hardware suppliers. And with the new 8000 series now, we've got more scalability, more customization specs of the appliances. And these appliances are using all the latest Intel nearline SAS drives with 12 gigabits per second cache. They've also got lightningly fast SSD Intel cards in them for our dedupe indexes. They've all got dual power supplies. they're very scalable and high performance units. One of the other big attractions around the appliance is that the software license is built into the cost of the appliance. So you can back up as many physical and virtual machines that will fit onto the storage of the appliance. There's no additional software license required. The only limiting factor is how much storage is on the appliance in terms of how many backups can you hold, but it's unlimited node level protection in there. Now in the appliance we basically have 4 models. The 8100 comes with 4 terabytes of onboard storage which can be expanded up to 6 terabytes. The 8200 has 8 terabytes which can be expanded up to 12 terabytes. The 8300 has 16 terabytes which can be expanded up to 40 terabytes, and the 8400 is our largest appliance which comes with 32 terabytes of storage and can be expanded up to 80 terabytes of disk. You'll also notice that we can expand the RAM. Now we've talked about instant VM restore and virtual standby. You can actually use the appliance as a provisioning server, so we have Hyper-V engines installed on the appliance. So if you want to provision onto the appliance itself, so it's not just a backup repository, it's also a hypervisor that you can provision onto. You can increase the RAM on the appliances if you need to run X number of VMs, etc. So they're very configurable. We can also add things like 10 gigabit Ethernet. We can add in fiber channel cards for fiber channel SANs and fiber channel connected tape libraries. We can also do lots of other customization around the units. So they're very popular, they're very cost effective, especially when you consider if you're working on a new data protection product, you have to go out and buy a brand new server, you have to buy a disk array to connect for backup storage, and then you have to license all the software on top. Often you find with the appliance it's actually more cost effective to have everything together, and you've also got one vendor to deal with. In terms of the maintenance with the appliance, we offer different maintenance levels. We offer next business day support, which is what we call gold maintenance. So you get parts replaced, you're entitled to 24/7 software support, access to new versions of software as well. But the hardware is limited to next business day support. With the platinum maintenance, the difference is that you get a 4-hour call out 24/7 on the hardware. We actually ship you a spare kit which has spare disks, it has spare SSDs and other components that make up the appliance. So essentially all we need to do is send an engineer on site, the spare parts are already there, and then we replenish the spare kit if we need any of the parts from it to repair the appliance. We also have Platinum Plus, which is the same as Platinum, but that also has access to our appliance upgrade program, where essentially you can get a brand new appliance every 3 years if you renew your maintenance, for like in terms of your capacity. But if you need to grow into a larger appliance, you get a 50% discount on the cost of a larger appliance unit if you're on Platinum Plus maintenance. So the software is all 24/7 enterprise support. We've also got the Arcserve Cloud. Now the Arcserve Cloud is very popular as well because it really complements the Arcserve. Often when customers are looking at Azure and Amazon, these clouds are actually quite expensive, because if you need to provision servers on top of the storage, that's where the cost significantly rises. With the Arcserve Cloud, we license by the amount of deduplicated terabytes we send to the cloud, and in there you get a virtual appliance in the cloud. You also get access to what we call continuity server, which is a Hyper-V layer that we can actually spin up your backups into a Hyper-V environment in the cloud, and you can access them over the network. So it's a DR as a service, it's a long-term repository, an off-site DR location, which is ideal for small, medium enterprise businesses that don't want to be bogged down with the costs of managing tapes or paying for their own DR site. Now in terms of customers, this is just an example of some of the customers we have in the UK. You can see here we have a real mix. There's no particular business vertical we're more successful in. We do a lot of business with government, public sector, NHS, universities, local government, police forces, all sorts use Arcserve. We've also got a lot of commercial customers as well, and the list is growing all the time. This is not a definitive list. We have many more customers than this, but this is just a handful that we have in the UK running Arcserve, and also Ireland as well. We've also won a lot of awards over the last 18 months. We won some really big awards at VMworld 2015, which was actually at the end of 2015, just coming into 2016, where we won Best Disaster Recovery and Backup for Virtualized Environments, Best Virtualization project we did with the MK Smart Initiative, part of the Open University, and we've won lots of other awards over the last 12 months as well. Before we go into the demo, just want to tell you that we have a brand new website, arcserve.com. If you go to the UK page, you can pull down data sheets, white papers, case studies. We also offer a free 30-day, no strings attached eval copy of UDP. So if you have a test environment, a virtual lab that you want to install and play with the software, it's available with a fully functional license for 30 days. We've also got lots of online content around training and tutorials on YouTube that you can access as well. So a wealth of information there if you're looking for it. Now we're going to go into a demo now. What I'm going to do is actually go into my virtual lab, and hopefully you can see this now. This is the new UDP 6.5 console. Anybody that was familiar with version 6, you'll notice that the dashboard has been really overhauled, I would say, fundamentally different to UDP 6. There's a lot more content in the dashboard now, so at a glance you can see your backup status over here, so I know all my backups are good because everything's green. In the middle here we're showing you your dedupe ratios, so the dark blue line is showing you the actual back-end disk storage that's being used. The sort of light blue line in the middle here is showing you how much data you've backed up in the last 7 days, and then the slightly darker blue line at the top is showing you that if you had to restore everything that you've backed up, how much data would you have to restore. So it gives you an indication, you know, what's in the database, what's recoverable, how much you've backed up in the last week, and how much physical storage you've used on disk. In the right hand segment down here, this is showing you your recovery point objective report. So it's giving you an idea of how many recovery points you've backed up on per month, and it's broken down. So I've backed up 37 recovery points in the last week or so. Also, it's showing you the age of your newest recovery point. So how many recovery points has been backed up in the last 15 minutes. It's got 1 in the last hour, none in the last day, 3 in the last 7 days, 9. But this is just a test lab. In a production environment, you'd get much more, you know, predictable statistics in this. And ageist of the oldest recovery points. So it's basically saying I have 13 recovery points that are within 7 days old because I only installed the product 4 days ago. So the dashboard's good. We've also got the recovery time objective reports, which is basically defined on these SLA groups. So you can add groups into different categories and then measure the service. So far all the restores that I've done have been in line with the recovery time objective. So I did a bare metal recovery of a server. I think I put the BMR recovery time objective as 1 hour, and it recovered it within that hour. Virtual machine restore, this is more of a VM level restore. Again, I think I have an RTO of an hour, and it's done it within there. The assured recovery test, this is the DR testing. I think that's within 30 minutes, and it's done that. File level restore, you know, so you can see the different categories there, and this constantly gets updated as you do more and more restores. It's measuring the recovery time objective for all your servers on an ongoing basis. Now, in terms of administration, under the resources tab here, you can see that this is where you manage the nodes that you're backing up. We have a discovery tool here that you can go into, for example, your VMware environment. So you can log into vCenter, for example, to discover VMs that you want to back up. And here you can see I've got vCenter. I can drill in, to my lab and my ESXi host, and then add VMs that I want to protect. We've also got a plugin for Hyper-V, and we fully support Hyper-V clusters, where you can go out and discover Hyper-V VMs and do agentless backup for Hyper-V environments as well, and add those in. For physical servers, we can either type the name of the servers in or look up your AD and then add in your servers that you want to manage in there. Now, once you've added the servers into the database, for physical servers, what we do is we push out agents onto them. So you select the servers and then select Action, Install Upgrade Agent, and you can push out the agent and get a full agent deployment dialog of pushing it out. By default, it uses HTTPS, but in my lab I'm using just HTTP because it's just a secure lab that's not on the network. But obviously in a production environment we do recommend HTTPS because we get 256-bit AES encryption on all communication and all data as well. Now, once you've pushed out the agents, you don't really need to do anything else for your VMs because we back them up agentless. Then we set up what we call our recovery point servers. The RPS servers are our backup engines, I suppose, or media servers, and on there we create storage pools called data store. So all you need to do is highlight the RPS server and select add a data store. Here's one I've made earlier, I suppose, and you can see that we just create a set of directory structures on disk for the data, the index, and the dedupe hash. We can also set the block size, we can enable encryption, and also specify how many concurrent active nodes can back up to the data store at once. Once you save that, it initializes, and actually if you click on the data store, you get a list of the nodes that have been backed up. So if you want to get a history of how often the server was being protected, you can go in to the history and you can see. So this machine is doing incremental forever, but again I've only had it installed for a few days because I've upgraded my lab, and you can see that it's I've done a couple of fulls, but in general it normally does incremental forever in production environments. So I've got data stores here. I've also got a server in the cloud with a cloud data store which I use for off-site replication. Now we then create plans, okay, and the plans are a kind of workflow. It's a workflow engine that you can create different tasks. So if I modify this plan here, you'll see that in there I've got different tasks already created. I have an agentless backup policy that allows me to back up VMs. So if I want to back up more VMs, I can just go in and then add the VMs into my list and add them in there. Then my destination is where I'm backing up to, which is my data store on my recovery point server called Manager. Then I create my backup schedules. By default, we do a daily backup at 10 o'clock at night, and we keep 7 incrementals on disk, and it just keeps on repeating the process and keeping the last 7 incrementals. But again, these are just templates. You can also add in weekly and monthly schedules, and when you do a monthly and a weekly backup, you can make them incrementals as well. And it will just retain this. So this is going to retain 5 weekly recovery points, 7 dailies, and 3 monthlies. But if I wanted to make 14 dailies, I just go in here and change it here. If I want to hold 6 monthlies, I just go and change it there. It's that easy. And then we have advanced options if you want to use software snapshots, which is a default, or you can use hardware snapshot if you've got a supported disk array to offload the snapshot from the VMware or the Hyper-V or the agent onto the SAN if you're using SAN storage, and that will use a disk array snapshot at the back end. Then you can also enable log truncation if you want. So if you want to truncate the Exchange SQL logs, you can do that daily. You've also got placeholders to run scripts, and you can enable email alerts as well. So there's quite a few fields to configure, but it's pretty straightforward. Then I've got a replication task. I'm actually replicating to the cloud. You can throttle the traffic as well. So I've got a rule that says between 8 o'clock in the morning and 6, if there were any replication tasks running, it would only use a maximum of 100 megabits a second. You know, and you can set that relative to the speed of your connection just to ensure that the network's available for internet connection in the business. You can also vary the retention policy count. So if I wanted to hold, you know, 4 years worth of end of month recovery points in the cloud, I could just set that to there, and holds more recovery points in the cloud than what I do on my on-site RPS. I've also got a virtual standby task. This allows me to create a virtual clone, and I'm doing this at the DR location, so I'm connecting into Hyper-V to create virtual clones of my backups. I've also got a copy to tape task. This is only relevant if you want to do a copy to tape. If you don't have tape in your environment, you don't add a copy to tape task. And you can actually do it from the on-site backup or the replicated copy. So I can migrate my disk-based backups from the DR recovery point server onto tape. And this is what a lot of customers do. They will put a larger tape library autoloader unit on the DR recovery point server and do all the disk to tape copies from there, because even if it takes 3 or 4 days to run to do a monthly offload to tape, it's all happening at the DR site. It's not impacting the production environment at all. So it makes kind of sense to do that, and there it'll pick up the tape library and your slots, etc. I've also got an assured recovery test in here as well, and the assured recovery test allows me to run DR tests on a regular basis, and I can select if I want to do it on the last recovery point or my monthly recovery point or my weekly. I can just select what I want to do here, and then your test settings is where do you want to do provisioning. I'm going to do instant virtual machine, which will spin up the node as an instant VM directly from the backup. I can select the hypervisor where I want to do the DR test on, and the data store, and I also have the ability to select my proxy I want to use, and if you want to put it on the network, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can really test it out as far as you want it to be in there. So these are all the test criteria. You can also do instant virtual disk testing as well, which mounts a recovery point as local disk, verifies integrity of the volume file system, and optionally executes custom scripts on it as well. So it mounts the volume, makes sure all the data is readable, etc. So you can do volume level DR testing as well, which is great for things like file servers to make sure the data is readable and recoverable. So you can add all these tasks. Once you do your initial backup, all the other tasks will run off the back of that. You don't have to tell it when to run the disk to tape or replication. It just automatically kicks in a workflow. So what we'll do now is quickly kick off a backup just to show you what it looks like when it's running. I'm just going to do a Hyper-V backup here, but it could be a VMware backup. I'm just randomly picking a machine in my lab. You'll notice though when we're doing agentless backups that we use all the APIs from the hypervisor, so we're not doing anything proprietary. And you'll see spinning icons appear into the console window. So here it's running an active backup, and at this point most customers, if they're running lots of nodes backups at the same time, they go into the jobs tab, and all the nodes that you're backing up will be listed here. If you've got a lot of nodes and a lot of plans, you can also group the job by the name of the plan, just so you can see the nodes under a particular plan running, rather than seeing the nodes for every server, for everything running at the same time. And if you go into details, it gives you a more detailed view of exactly what's going on with the backup. So here we're connecting into the Hyper-V backup utility. It will tell me in a second it's updating change block tracking, which is Hyper-V's very similar to VMware change block tracking. It just calculates the change blocks when it takes a snapshot from the previous snapshot, so it's only picking up the incremental block changes. And once that's done, we will analyze the snapshot and then start to compress and dedupe the data. So there you go, it's updating the CBT now, and in a second it'll tell me it's taken a snapshot. And if I go to the Hyper-V console, you'll see that it actually updates the Hyper-V end as well. You can see that it's backing up because we're just leveraging the APIs through the hypervisor. So once that snapshot's been created, we will basically initiate and start the backup. What I want to show you before we move on to the restore examples is, we are compressing and deduping the data. So overall, I'm getting a 97% data reduction on this backup. So it's backed up 1.11 gigabytes, but I'm only backing up about 2% of that data. The rest is deduped and compressed. So it's very, very fast, and we use that compression when we replicate across the network as well. So you'll see in a second that it will start to replicate. There we go. So if I go replicate out, you'll see now. And when we're starting to replicate, it will use bandwidth compression and dedupe across the replication. So you can see there 96% dedupe saving on the replication because it's comparing the blocks in the remote data store and only sending the unique blocks. So we're very quick at moving data as well. Now in terms of restore, we've got all the standard restore options that you would expect in any normal environment. So here when I click a server and select restore, it launches a console, and I can go in if I want to restore files and folders on a physical or a virtual machine. I just select the date of the last backup, and in that 24-hour window it will show me the snapshots that have been taken, and then I'll highlight the snapshot I'm interested in, and it gives me a point-in-time view of the NTFS volume, and I can go in and I can restore to the original location, restore to an alternative, etc. In this view as well, you can also restore databases. So this machine's running SQL Server. I can go in and restore SQL database to the original, to an alternative. If I want to do a granular SQL restore, I can dump it back to disk as a file, and it restores it as a SQL export format, and then I can restore using Visual Studio and import that object, and I can do table space, SQL object restore, etc. from there as well. Now it also provides AD object level recovery. So this server is an AD server, and I can go in and I can restore AD objects. So I can go in, restore computers, etc., right down to attribute level, and it restores all the GID and everything as well. So it's really easy to do. It pops it straight back into Active Directory. You can restore AD groups, computer objects, etc. as well. For on-prem Exchange restore, we've got an Exchange granular restore tool. It's a kind of what you need to do an Exchange granular restore is you need to mount the recovery point from your Exchange backup. So it's really easy to do this. You just select your server that's holding the Exchange. So I've got an RPS server called RPS-R, and then I just select my Exchange server, and then what I'm going to do is mount the volume holding the mailbox database, which is, in my case, it's just a small Exchange server. It's on the C drive. In a production server, it could be the DEF drive, and then you put in your password. Now once you mounted the Exchange mailbox database volume from the backup as a drive letter, I then launch the Exchange granular restore tool, and it automatically picks up the mounted volume, and if I just show you here, it goes into the Z drive, and it knows where to find the EDB file, and then you can go in and it indexes all the mailboxes, and you can recover individual emails. It's really easy to use, and I can basically restore back to the original user's mailbox or export it into a PST folder. Now we've also got the ability to do a VM level restore, recover VMs, which is recover the VMDKs or the VICs back to VMware, or the VHD files back to Hyper-V. You can search for files. If you're doing file copy to the cloud, you can browse file copies. So lots of granular restore options there. You've also got things like restoring Office 365 as well. So in here, if I select restore of a user's mailbox that's been backed up, so I just need to select that one. You'll notice that it gives you a different view again. So this is an Exchange Office 365, actually of my own mailbox. We use Office 365 in the cloud. I select my recovery point, and then I can go in and restore individual emails from my cloud account. So it just takes a second to load, and I can go in. So my inbox here, I don't really want to say anything confidential, but you can see there I could restore these emails. And then you've got the usual options if you want to restore them back to the original location. You can also restore them to an alternative folder as well if you don't want to put them back in the cloud. So you've got all the Office 365 integration there as well. You can also do CIFS restores. So this is restoring a CIFS backup. So lots, we're adding new stuff all the time. So in here, this was a CIFS backup that I did of a NetApp NAS, and once it mounts it, you can just go in and restore anything in that folder. So it just takes a second to load up. There you go. So I've got files in here. I also put in all our latest training materials in the CIFS share to back it up, just to give me more data. And I can go in and restore individual folders and files from my NAS backup. So it's really easy to do all this granular restore. So I'm going to come out of there now. We've also got all the provisioning technology, so if a server fails, I can spin it up as a VM straight away. So I just go right click the server and say standby VM, I select my snapshot and then power on. And in this case, I'm going to power on a VMware server that was backed up into Hyper-V. And then here you'll see I've got a Hyper-V environment, and you just see this server here, which was a server backed up from vCenter. It's a Windows 2012 server, and within a few minutes that system will be on the network because we copied it and converted it into a Hyper-V VM from a VMware VM. We can even use this as a migration tool. We've had customers migrating from VMware to Hyper-V as well. So this doesn't take long, just a minute or two to spin up. In addition to that, we've also got instant VM restore, and that's really easy as well. So you just right click a server and say I want to restore, create an instant VM. You select your recovery point, then this is an encrypted backup, so I just need to put my encryption password in, and then you select your hypervisor. So in my case, I'm going to select vCenter, but I could have selected Hyper-V as well. You can do it to any hypervisor in your environment. So I'm just going to drill in and select my host. And then all you need to do now is it says, do you want to use your recovery point server as the provisioning machine, which is the case because that's where my backups are. Then I have to create a mount folder on the appliance or the RPS server, which acts as a mount point to the hypervisor, and then basically I can put in my networking if I want as well, and then basically I can just press finish and boot now. And what you'll see now is on the virtual environment, when this starts spinning, just takes a second, if I go to my hypervisor now, you'll see that we've just added this UDP instant VM onto the hypervisor. What it actually does on the virtual host is it creates an Arcserve UDP storage pool, which is basically getting provisioned now as we speak. It's an NFS mounted data store, so it's linking back to the storage on the appliance, and then basically this machine will get powered on, and it will power it on and come up online. So it's all very automated, very easy to do. This is a Hyper-V one we just did before with virtual standby. That's already up and running, and this will start up in a second. So you can see there it's now powering on the machine, and if I go into my console, we should see it powering on and coming online. So all this technology is available for fast recovery into the console. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the reports that we've added. We've now added a job status report to give you a summary view of the nodes protected, the start time, the end time, how much data was backed up, etc. And if you need to refresh that at any point, you just press the refresh button, and it gives you a nice breakdown of all the jobs and how it was backed up. We've also got your recovery point objective reports, which are all new, and and recovery time reports as well. So this is just going to refresh now. So these are all your SLA groups, and measuring the recovery time for the different types of tests in your environment. It tells you which ones were met, across the different nodes that are in that group that you're measuring. So really easy to set up. all that as well. You've also got your backup status reports where you can go into any day's backup, and if you see a particular day you're interested in, you can see the successful jobs. I can click on failed jobs as well. So if I go into this bottom part here, this node failed, and it even gives you the error codes. It's because the VM was basically running on a data store that was shut down in VMware, so it couldn't access it. That's why the backup failed. So you get an idea, and all these reports can be scheduled out on a daily basis via email as well. So that's the instant VM restore. You can see it's running now in VMware, and it's all rock and roll, ready to go. So that's me kind of concluding the demo for today. I could go on and on. I could show you the high availability stuff. We've got real-time replication and HA technology that allows us to replicate physical and virtual machines asynchronously. So I'm replicating a Windows 2012 R2 server from Hyper-V directly to VMware, and I can do automated switchover and DR testing in there as well. So for today, I'm going to conclude the presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to quickly go back to the presentation, ask if there's any questions. Now, if you do have any questions, please use the questions panel, and happy to answer any questions on the GoToWebinar software. If you don't have any questions, I hope you've enjoyed the session. My name is Charlie Smith. It's Friday. I'm looking forward to it. Have a great weekend when it comes. And if you need to speak to anybody at Arcserve, just get in contact with your partner or your Arcserve sales representative, or you can contact the pre-sales team, and we're here to help on any questions that you may have. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time.